Adam Weinman, who teaches at an Ableton school out here in LA. We did like a podcast with him, and then I had him come over and like reset up my studio in here.
Okay.
I've got this like little room in my house right now. He helped me like set it all up and have good signal flow and MIDI, and everything's in sync and whatever.
Nice.
And then he gave me the shout on the UAD, and then all the plugins. I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. Like, it's a really nice piece of gear.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I like UAD stuff. As far as MIDI stuff, I have my whole studio connected to iConnectivity Mio. I love that thing. If you like need a billion MIDI ports to talk to each other and connect, like that's my favorite thing.
I've never heard of it. I don't know. I learned how to like do all this stuff a long time ago, and I have not learned anything new. Like the laugh that I have with Adam is he's like, dude, you make music, like you have this one particular style that you do. And I'll even sit here and I'm like, dude, so much something like sick shit. He like brings up all these plugins that like make MIDI for you and do all this mad shit. And I'm like, that doesn't speak to me, like, I don't know. Yeah. It's funny.
Well, I mean, you definitely have a locked in sound. And from what I do know is you came from more of like a hip hop sampling kind of background, right?
So I guess I came more from DJing. My taste was originally very much rap music and hip hop, like 90s era sort of stuff. When I first left school and truth be told, took ecstasy for the first time, I was like, whoa, what is dance music? Like, holy shit. And then like just on a whim went and bought 2 Technics turntables and a bunch of vinyl and like learned how to DJ.
Nice.
And then a friend of mine and I started throwing club nights in Sydney, and I would DJ and like book DJs, and I would like open all night. And then a friend, and like going around and buying records, there was just like one grizzled old DJ. For some reason, like we hit it off or whatever, and I was chatting to him. He's like, dude, if you want to actually get anywhere doing this, learn how to produce. And like it was basically him working me, because he was then going to teach me how to use Ableton and get me to pay him to teach me how to use Ableton. But nice. It worked, and like, but I used it in conjunction with Reason, Rewire, and I kind of first got into producing and stuff. And then I just went specifically into Ableton, and then from there, that's all I've ever used. Sorry, going back to your question, like, yeah, I think out of dance music and getting into writing music, I then understood how important sampling was to a lot of the music that I love and was drawn to. Obviously, a lot of the 90s hip-hop stuff there's some kind of sample element, whether it's just drums or it's a whole chop or whatever. And then a lot of my favorite dance music, Daft Punk, etc., and Chemical Brothers and Prodigy, and like all these acts, you're like, oh, this is amazing. And then in this day and age, social media has these great videos that I've seen like on Instagram where they go in and they like break down all these like samples that say like Prodigy is used for Smack My Bitch Up and whatever. Yeah. And it's, I really love that stuff. I was chatting to a friend of mine this morning and I was like, music and this creative outlet that I have is, I'm not a religious or spiritual person really. My wife will tell me that, tell you such like all the horoscopes and what have you, like I don't take a lot of it seriously and it gives you the shits, but music and creating and like finding a sample and flipping it and like turning something that was something into something new, and I don't know, it's always really resonated with me. I'm also not a musician, dude, so like I couldn't play you a song, right? I can sit there and know how to get what I want to get out of them at this point, but like I'm not a traditional musician. I love working with musicians. It makes the whole process so much more fun as well. Like if you can actually get someone who can play keys and you can show them the type of music that you like and whatever, you can have a lot of fun doing that.
Well, I mean, I would never have guessed that you would say that just listening to Neil Francis music, because it is very, I think, well composed, well structured. And like, I think that goes to show what you just said is like a lot of producers today, you don't have to be an instrumentalist to make great music. I think that some people just naturally have a better ear, and you're probably one of those people where you just know what fits and you just kind of have that knack of like piecing stuff together. And I mean, with the sample libraries and AI and all this other stuff and tools now, it's like
you don't need it. And I can speak to that a little bit. When I was coming up around the time where I was throwing parties and DJing, to get myself through university in Australia, I would DJ for like, that's my background predominantly. It's like electronic music. So like doing the club night, I went right deep down into like electronic music and really deep dove into that whole world, along with obviously rap and hip hop and stuff. Pop for me has only been something in my like late 20s, early 30s that I've actually concentrated on, because all of my 20s I was chasing just being like a DJ and making like club music. Working with Mark, with Neil Francis, was sort of the first time that I ever recorded a vocal. Yeah, wow. It's like seriously recorded a vocal and like, oh, you wait, sing it again and it becomes a double. Oh, and it sounds cool like that. And then like sing a harmony. Like the funny thing about what he and I created is kind of dumb luck falling on top of one another and us meeting at the same time and what have you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would play these really long DJ sets for like 5 or 6 hours, and in doing that, you get this kind of like knowledge of music that works in the background, certain music that works when the party kicks up. You're also a DJ setting a mood, so you kind of learn all these things that can inform you creatively when you're writing music.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of came from the opposite way. It was like I was kind of producing all that stuff, and then I got into DJing. But
Oh
I
wow,
think it's pretty common for a lot of DJs to get into producing, because, and I think it's like a huge advantage if you want to go the live performance route, having that background. Because I mean, and especially with Club Neil Francis now,
hmm
which seems to be you guys are investing a lot more in, which is really cool. I like that direction of the project a
thanks.
lot. It was like you've
Thanks.
got this kind of indie, like pop, like you said, more vibe that you started with, and now you're moving more into like the taking those original songs and putting them in a club environment and kind of remixing them for that. That's really kind of a cool full circle way to bring it around. I know with the live performance, I definitely want to touch on some of that stuff, but like you and Mark originally, when you first started working together, you were working writing together for other vocalists. Is that right? Like you were.
No, I moved to London and lived there for 2 years and chased. Like I was like, if I'm going to go and be an electronic music producer and a DJ, I'm going to jump in head first. Just moved to London. I had an agent over there. I'd done a tour. I had a couple of successful songs from my previous project. It was called Light Year, and it was kind of like pretty upfront club music. And a couple of records that allowed me to tour Europe, tour the States. And so I was like, let's just dive head first, go over to the UK. As an Australian, if you're under 30, you can get a visa to go live in the in the UK for 2 years. So I went and did that and just crashed and burned, dude, so hard. Like I went over there and I got in my head, because I used to always do my head in when I would DJ. Are people there to see my taste in music, or are people there to see me play my own music? I don't really like playing my own music, so I want to play like what I'm into. And it was this weird sort of thing. I never really landed on a space for myself that I was comfortable with. I moved, when the 2 years was up, I moved to LA, and Mark, I had met touring the US as my previous act. I'd done a remix for his old band,
Okay.
and I'd produced a song for him and his old band. And we both basically moved back. Well, I moved to California. He's from California. He was living in New York at the time. He moved back to California the same week. And a mutual friend was like, yo, Mark's around. And I was like, oh, yeah, I've always liked Mark's voice and stuff. And I'm kind of at this weird creative crossroads where I'm still in love with dance music, but I don't mean this in a crass way, but I used to always have this joke, like dance music owes me money. The amount of man hours I put in to it and how little it gave back to me then.
Yeah.
And Mark and I kind of just like got together. I had some demos. I was like, dude, I got some demos and stuff, and they're not really like dance music songs, but they've got those elements in there. Like, can you sing a top line? Like, I don't know what that means. And they were like, yeah, we'll write songs for other people, not having any idea what that means. I still can't do that, by the way. I can't write songs for other people. I'm so bad at that. But the intention was, yeah, we'll write these pop songs. And because we're writing pop songs and Mark doesn't necessarily align with pop as much as I don't necessarily align with pop, it's kind of like we flirt with it a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the early stuff that we wrote. And then we sent it to some friends and what have you. And they were like, this is good. You guys should like put this out.
Yeah, yeah. I read something that like some of your early demos with Mark were picked up on SoundCloud. Is that right?
Yeah, Chris Doritas from KCRW, our now booking agent, who was a mutual friend, shared that set list that we sent to him. And I was like, what do you think of all this stuff I've been writing with Mark? He's like, I think it's fucking awesome. And he sent it to Chris to get like a gauge from him, who's a DJ on KCRW here in LA. Chris just ripped one of the songs off of that SoundCloud set and played it. And then a friend of mine called me and was like, hey, I just heard Neil Francis get back announced on KCRW. Chris Doritas just played one of your songs. And I was like, it's always been sort of funny little organic moments like that along the way. Like that happens. Then all of a sudden someone that we know offers us a gig at Echo Park Rising here in LA. It's like, oh man, how are we going to play these songs? Like, again, like as I told you earlier, I'm not a musician. So like, what do I do in the band? Like it was just this kind of funny process of like falling over each other, getting to where we are today.
Yeah, that speaks to the power of collaboration too. You guys come from like different backgrounds, and that makes like I think an original, organic kind of sound. Different styles meshed together.
Totally.
Yeah, so maybe let's talk a little bit about some of the production side, and then definitely want to get into the performance and just nerd out a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
But I know that you both use a lot of like MIDI synths, analog drum machine kind of style of stuff. Maybe talk a little bit about like what are some of your go-to devices or gear that you guys
for
like to work
production.
For production, yeah.
Yeah. I guess going all the way back, like I've always been very interested in Daft Punk, and I was a really big fan of them because I'd never heard, when I first heard them, I'd never heard anyone kind of bridge the gap between what I liked about rap music and what I liked about dance music. And they did a really, really cool job of it. They would like sample breaks, but then they'd also be using analog gear and running stuff through guitar pedals and whatever. And then fast forward, at this point, I read that they had a Moog Voyager, and that was a big component of how they would write music. I had no idea what that was. I went and did some research, and I saved up some money from those DJ gigs I was telling you about earlier, and I went and bought myself a $3,500 monophonic synth. Like I didn't even understand what the difference between polyphonic and monophonic or whatever. This is what Daft Punk uses. This is what I'm going to use. And I went and got it. Picked it up. Most amount of money I'd ever spent on anything in my life. I went back to my studio that I was working in with a friend, and I was like, "Yo, I got this Moog, blah blah blah, and it's sick." And he's like, "Yeah, we should play some chords." And I'm like, "Yeah, cool." and he goes and presses play, and he's like, "Only one note's playing." I'm like, "What? Why?"
It's broken. Send it back.
It's broken. Then I realized it's a monophonic synth, but ironically, that keyboard has been with me all the time. We still use that keyboard as Moog Voyager, one of the new Moog Voyager. It's still 15 years old, but it's the first of the digital, well, it's analog, but the like newer creative ones, not one of the very old.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, dude, I'm influenced by a lot of that 90s era music. So a lot of it is using, or it's sampling classic drum machines. So your 909s, your 707s, your 808s. And I got familiar with what the sounds were, what the characteristic is of each clap on those machines, each kick, each hi-hat, whatever. I would also, at the same time, in playing these really long DJ sets that I would play, you have to listen to the whole song when you're playing a song. So you hear bits and pieces in songs that you can be like, oh, there's like a kick snare into the chorus, but you can be like, oh, I can go grab that. And like you learn how to sample different drum things. And then I also just fell in love with synths. So we've got, behind me right now, I like using gear. I know you can do it all in the box these days, easy, and it would probably sound better or like be able to sound the same. But there's something about it for me that I already don't know how to play them really, but that's fun rather than being stuck inside a keyboard. I kind of stuck inside a computer. I like here's the knob in front of me and you know, kind of playing a vibe and making something with my hands, something tangible than it all coming from the computer. So I've got an ARP Odyssey there, which is like doesn't take MIDI, doesn't do anything. I basically dub myself when I'm using that thing. So I'll like down, I'll run a loop down, and then I'll sit there and find the next note that I want in the bass line, down, you know, run a kind of sequence and dub myself.
Yeah.
Use that thing. That's a classic old, the D50 is like a very Detroit techno sounding synthesizer. Also feels like sort of Juno-y. And then down there you can see the Prophet 5.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I love
the Prophet 5.
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic. I love it.
It's great. I could hear that in the music too, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I've had that since the first album. And then I've got the new TR8S Roland drum machine that does a pretty good job. And it's got all three, instead of having to spend, if you wanted a 707, a 909, and an 808 these days in original form, you'd probably be on the hook for close to 10 grand.
Yeah, it's insane.
But it does a pretty good job of all three of them, plus a bunch of other Roland stuff that's good. And then from there, I don't have it really that built out right now, but I don't know if I'm going to pull the keyboard out, but you can't see, but on the ground, I've got like delay pedals, the H delay there. It's got a sick. Like, MIDI sync that you can sync it all up. So when you're tracking back, it's all the delay stuff is in time, which is really tight. I use a lot of the Moog. I'm a sucker for anything Moog. I use a lot of the Moog effect pedals and stuff. And I've got this studio set up where I can be running a sequence or the drums or whatever out through all the pedals. And then I also love, you can see over there, that vintage tape machine.
Oh, nice.
The 501.
Yeah.
I use that on basically every single song. Like every single song has probably been treated by that. Even if it's just like I get to the point where I like my drum sound, or even as I'm trying to find what the drum sound is, I'll be like, okay, I want this kick and this snare and this hi-hat. Fuck it, let's stick them together on tape, you know, and like record it and commit to it. And like you start to slowly build up kind of like a sound signature of crunchiness over the course of the song, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't care what people say. There is just something nice about the imperfections of analog.
100%, 100%.
You know, and you can emulate it. There's UAD plugins. Like, it's not going to be exactly the same.
It's not. I have them, and you probably can do exactly what I'm doing on that machine, but I'm faster on the machine outside of the box than inside of the box. When I see like demos of nerdy kids being like, "Oh, here's how I got this sound" or whatever, and they go into Serum and they set an LFO to this and that and whatever and blah blah blah. And I don't know how to do any of that. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing half the time. Truly, honestly, like I know. Like, obviously, I understand synthesis at this point, but like, setting this to trigger this and whatever just to get the sound. I'm like, I don't know. Just like twisting knobs. Yep, great. That's a little bit more. This, that, and the other. Great, fantastic. You know, like commit, record. And you also have to commit. That's what I love about this stuff. It's like you're onto something and you've got a vibe. Record, and like, yeah, you can fuck with it with plugins, but like you've committed to the idea, which is half the battle, dude.
No, I've definitely had commitment issues in my life as a producer, and I think everybody does at some point. I've been freezing and flattening a lot more now than I used to, because I used to be scared. I was like, oh no, it's stuck. And it's like, sometimes you got to be stuck. That's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Just move on. I think that kind of goes to like, use whatever you want and what's good for you. There's no perfect answer for, you know, every use case. So
I mean, man, I swear by ignorance is kind of bliss, and the less you know, sometimes the better. Like, again, the early music that we were making, Mark like on Teardrops, for instance. I did this video a couple of years back, or maybe a year or so ago, where I ran through how I made the song and went into the project. What I was doing was like so intuitive, but like it was so wrong at the same time. It was funny to me to go back, and it's like I would make a drum break. And then I'd be like, okay, Mark, just play the drum kit in the room and just play for like 16 bars, add some humanness to it. So like he'd sit there and play basically the same break, but he'd do a little fill at the end of 8 bars and whatever, and we'd find a nice one. And then I would like make it nice and snug on a grid. And then I would add the electronic sounds to it, like a Lindrum kick and a snare. So everything has that bite that it should have, but it has the sound of a drum kit in a room. And it's this kind of mixture of everything that creates like a unique balance and like a unique sound. I still do all that shit today.
Yeah, that's cool. Like some unique layering with that kind of stuff. Yeah, especially when it comes to drums. I'm a drummer as well, so I like to layer the crap out of my stuff and getting it off grid too. Like that's a nice thing about playing, rather than just having little MIDI lines that are just locked in perfectly. Like using your analog gear, it's not going to be always perfectly in time, which is nice.
So good. Makes such a difference. Once you. That's another thing. When I first started writing music, again, because didn't come from any discipline in terms of an instrument, so much of it was just like a giant learning curve for me. Like the first guy that I would work with, I'd be like, yeah, let's quantize. And he'd be like, no, let's not quantize, because then it has like a feel. And I'm like, no, but it's off. Like it's not on the beat. You know, I didn't get it. You know, then I would like actually listen to this swing. That's what's like making it do that. Although, even though it's probably like on a 909, the hat isn't there, but it's like the interaction between the hat hitting the clap, like that moment that gives it the thing. So
yeah, nice little flam. I mean, that's the thing too, is like I don't want to listen to robot music where everything's perfect. It just doesn't have a feel to it. There's no feeling. That's good. It's a good tip, especially for a lot of newer producers. I feel like everybody's like, it has to be perfect. It's like, no, dude, it's better if it's not.
100%.
Yeah, true. You guys have a lot of like a tapey kind of sound. Do you guys use any tape machines or like tape emulations that you really love?
That guy.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah. The Roland 501, it's the next one up from the 301, like the classic tape echo. You know what I'm talking about with the green face?
Yeah.
So this is the 501, which has a chorus on it as well.
Nice.
And again, like when I'm writing and I've got maybe like most of it kind of there and I'm feeling good about the track, I'll then start bouncing. I'll send from the computer through the tape machine, through the pedals, or just maybe through the tape machine, just to get the texture of the tape, because that's one trick that I learned. The input on those tape machines doesn't distort. Like you can smash it onto the tape and it doesn't distort, and it gets that fantastic like smudgy sound that can sound wicked if that's what you're trying to go for. Like on guitars, it's got this great chorus function as well, so it gets out of tune, but it sounds so sick. You know, it sounds like it's wobbling a bit. Also the effects, like the tape echo effects and the feedback is really cool, like atmospheric-y, spacey stuff. I love that thing. As I said earlier, I've put that on. We've got a song, Dancing, which is probably the
I love
most,
that song.
Yeah. I used it a lot on that song because the sample is so strange, and like mixing the two worlds together was a really fun process. And that thing, I'd say it's a bit of a sound signature for me as a producer. Is at a certain point during most songs, something is going to that, or like, you know, some synths are going to that, or I'm doing a double where I'm playing the synth and like nice clean take, and then like I'll record it through that all crazy and like fucked up, and then I'll mix them both together as one sound.
Yeah, it has a nice sound. Like that's another thing too. I think Neil Francis has such a distinct sound. Like I feel like I could hear any one of your tracks that I've never heard before and be like, oh, that's you guys.
Thanks.
And it probably comes back to like also just the consistency of using this analog gear and stuff and finding your palette of sounds. When it comes to like detuning stuff, I really like the MX Flanger. I know you're a UAD person or you like Universal Audio. Their MX Flanger plugin's really nice for that kind of stuff too. I'm a huge fan of that.
The actual pedal I'm seeing here online, or is there a plugin?
It's the plugin, yeah. The plugin is the MX Flanger.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah, that thing's really nice.
Yeah, I love all those sort of flanging, phasey effects.
It's a good one. You'd probably really like that. It has a very analog kind of detuning quality. This episode is sponsored by Baby Audio. They create some really fantastic instruments and plugins, and they just released a big update to their cult classic, the BA1 synth. That includes an all-new separate effects strip plugin based on its 80s inspired effects section. If you already own the synth, get the upgrade for free. Right now, you can get 51% off new downloads for this new intro sale. And if you use the code AMP15, which is in the show notes of this episode, you get an additional 15% off. So this is a great deal to take advantage of right now. Once again, check out the show notes, use the discount code AMP15, give it a listen for yourself. And a huge thanks to Baby Audio for supporting this podcast. So speaking of music production toys, what about Ableton stock devices? Anything like specifically in Ableton that you enjoy or use?
I use the EQ like to do basic subtraction EQ. When it makes sense, I'll, you know, push frequencies up, but I use that for, I think most of my tracks, I have like a preset Ableton file when I open up, and every single track has a high pass EQ on it right away, all the way. It's turned off, but like it's ready to go. Immediately dive into, if I'm recording vocals, bang, I can immediately cut all the low end out. Use a lot of that. Honestly, man, I had a particular like set of plugins that I was using for the longest when I started initially writing Neil Francis stuff. All the Sound Toys gear I really loved. Yeah, I used a lot of the Waves stuff back then as well. Yeah, and only in the last like 2 years when I got with Adam, when I was like, dude, I want something. I actually want something new now. Like, and he put me onto the UAD stuff. So there's also a lot of really fantastic like tape machine emulators. All the Pultec gear that they emulate is fantastic. The Fairchilds, all the compressors and stuff. I hadn't used a lot in my time because I would generally get my music mixed. I mean, it's not true though. Like the early Neil Francis stuff, which probably sounds crazy, was my mixes. And Mark always contends, it's funny, he's like, dude, your mixes are always better than the people that mix them properly. Or like properly in inverted commas, you know. It's like, which like might be, you know, I guess nobody knows how to mix your music better than you.
That's a good reminder right there. Some people overthink it and they've just heard it too many times and they just hate it.
Totally.
That doesn't mean it's necessarily bad.
It's hard, man. It's nice to have someone that you trust at that phase. Like there are some instances of music that I've put out recently, like all the club stuff that we put out, I've mixed. I haven't had our mix engineer do those mixes, but I would still probably have him mix the next Neil Francis album because I like to let go at that phase because I think the process is beneficial to like making the music. I try to convince myself of this, dude. I don't know, man. It's a tough one it's a tough one because like when I go through the process of going back and forth with my mix engineer, for instance, right? When we get to the end after the like, could be as little as three back and forths, could be a lot, could be 10, could be a lot, like to land on something. It definitely sounds different than my demo.
Yeah.
And then I would be interested if you played both and you were to a room of people and you were like, which one do you think sounds better? Between him and I going back and forth, we've got it sounding as good as what that is, but like, is it better than what the spirit of that demo was? You know, like, I don't know.
Uh, no, that's interesting. I think there's like a lot of things there at play. I can see it on one hand is where it's like, oh, you get so used to hearing it a certain way and you hear it in your head to be that way. And then
Mm-hmm.
somebody else hears it differently than you do. But that doesn't mean one's better than the other. Everybody's got like their
Exactly.
own personal taste.
That's the interesting thing. It's like they put it in a place that you didn't know, and then you hear it, and you're like, oh, that's good.
Yeah.
But is that better? I don't know.
What does good
Yeah,
mean?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Subjective.
100%.
Especially when you've been doing it for as long as you have. I mean, if this is like your third week of ever making music and mixing, that
Totally.
might be a different story. But I think that there is something really nice about having the control and ability to do that yourself, because maybe this has been true for Club Neil Francis's albums, but like if you wanted to do a remake of your track, being able to have the full control to go in and do that yourself rather than having to get the stems back from the engineer from the original.
Yeah, pain in the ass.
Yeah, such a pain in the butt. You have more control. Would you say that it's really beneficial for other people who have some experience to start mastering and doing all that themselves?
No, I would say it's way more important to learn how to write a song, learn how to write like a hook, or like hear what a hook could be in a sample, or like that element of like production is, in my opinion, like the icing of the icing of the icing on the cake. In my, like, I want to have the song 95% of where it's going to be before I send it to a mix engineer to add like that 5% on top, and then learn how to. I don't know how to master. I have no interest in learning how to master. It's not in my. I've got to watch myself here, but like in my opinion, I would much prefer to be creative and write a song. In my experience with mastering, it's about the least creative element of writing a song. Like, it's very technical. It's like, yeah. So no, I would much prefer to advise, like, buy a drum machine, learn what each sound of like classic drum machines sounds like, so that when you're writing a song, you can be like, I tell you what would be good in this. Like, this feels like a 90s house thing. Like, it needs a 909 on it in some way. That's way more beneficial than like doing whatever it is that mastering engineers do. Like this magical abyss thing that they do, that it comes back and it's like, yeah, it sounds good.
Yeah, but that's a good point too, is like you can't polish a turd either. So like enjoy make something the best song you could actually be. I had this conversation on a podcast the other day, is talking about like you could have the best master ever, but if the song sucks, then who cares? Nobody's going to listen to it.
Exactly. You can't rely on the mix engineer or the mastering engineer to make your song better. There's no way.
Yeah. I think that might be a good reminder for a lot of people out there listening. So when you're producing, do you, a lot of times, especially now, like playing shows with your Club Neil Francis project and everything, are you writing with live performance in mind? Or is that something you think of after the song is what it needs to be?
Not really. The Neil Francis original music, like everything before what is Club NF, it would be Mark and I just writing the music with complete disregard for what we do live. Even with the musicians in the band, like our bass player, he's also a fantastic guitarist. His name's Greg. He's written on a lot of Neil Francis. He's amazing.
Greg Chan.
He's written on a lot of our stuff, and we've had Rhythm, our drummer, also played drums on a lot of our stuff. I've completely blanked on where I was going with the question here. What was it?
So I was just basically saying, like, are you producing with live performance in mind?
Right. So the answer is no, 90% of the time. But what's interesting is that this Club NF campaign that we're doing now, the idea is that while we write what is going to be a new record, obviously dance music and electronic music and electronic culture and club culture is very important and very much an integral part of where we come from, both as musicians, Mark and I. So it's integral that like we represent that world, and a huge influence on us is Soulwax, and I've been a huge fan of that band, and I loved that back in the day when I was coming up, they could do so many things. Same with James Murphy and All City Sound System. They were presenting so many things to you as a fan. So they had a band, and the band would play music, and they had a DJ, and they could DJ, and they were tastemakers. And Mark and I were presented with this opportunity one time where the act was like, I want you guys to open for us, but I don't want the band. Like, I can't fit you guys on stage. Can you do a two-man? Can you do something scaled down? And Mark and I, for a week, frantically put together this like early stages of what would now become what is Club NF now. But we've never really had time to dial in and like make this its own thing. It was always like if we couldn't do a band show, maybe we could do a 2-man show and like kind of make sense of it. And our new team was like, no, we should be putting something around this so it is its own thing. I'm like, oh, that's cool, because it made me think of like the influences on me, like Soulwax and stuff, where they had the band, they had too many DJs, they would go and remix their own music into the club format. I'm like, we should do that. That'd be really fun.
Yeah.
In doing that, we were playing versions of like Dumb Love, Music Sounds Better With You, Be Free, etc. We were playing versions, or we were coming up with how to play them live, because we would have the sequencer, we would have our Moog, we would have all the different bits and pieces, and we would bounce out some of the stems and some of the samples and put them on hot cues on the CDJs. So we would be like, oh, okay, let's stretch this section out. And we would actually write what are the Club NF songs. We would write them live. What feels good, which is a really cool way of doing it, because ordinarily it's kind of a stagnant process writing music sometimes. It's like, oh, cool, we wrote a hook today and like we doubled it and we did all the technical things, but we weren't like really thinking expansively. And if you're writing live, it's like the beat is going live, and you're like, you got your sequencer and like, oh, it feels like this should come next. It feels like we could do this, it really is almost primal. You can feel how it should play out.
Yeah.
So with those records and a lot of these records that we've done for the Club NF thing, we've written the other way around, where we've come up with them live and then recorded them, versus recording the music and figuring out how to play it live, which is how we've predominantly done it in the past.
That's really cool. I think that's probably backwards than what a lot of people do, but I can see how...
Welcome to the way in which I've approached the music industry like the whole time, dude.
I mean, it's worked out. It seems like that's a really cool approach, though, because I feel like if you have that pressure and that adrenaline on stage in front of all those people and you're writing stuff in the moment.
Oh, no. It's not, we're not doing it live in front of people. We are rehearsing in our room. We're rehearsing the set and trying to figure out how to do it. So it's like, we can play the Dumb Love, we can program the Dumb Love bass line on our sequencer, so we can at least get the bass line going. And then we go and program the beat, and then we're like, okay, now we've got the engine room and the song going. Like, how do we make this happen with just the two of us? And we're like, we can go in and get the guitar solo out of the project and like sample it back on a CDJ. That'd be fun. So you go and do that, and then you start hitting back the samples and stuff. You're like, oh, cool. And you kind of like write how the song would go live, as opposed to sort of sitting in it. Again, it's kind of like always just trying to get out of the box as fast as possible, or as much as possible,
Yeah. Well, maybe talk about that process. Are you guys stemming out your tracks and then just like leaving like certain space to just come up with it? Or?
It depends. Like, I'll try to think of an example. So for instance, Dancing is the opener. It's what we're going to, spoiler alert, we're opening with that song, or a version of that song in the 2-man set. It's at 95 BPM, and we play it in the band, and in its original form, it's at 95 BPM. I took the samples, I bounced out the doom, doom, boom, 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 that little bit, and then I bounced out the bum, bum on a separate thing. So it would be boom, 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 goes for 8 bars, and I would loop it. And then the next phrase I would loop. Both of those would be on separate hot cues. Then I would have the hit. There's 2 hits. Dun, dun. I'd have those on 2 hot cues. And then there's the additional sample down the end, which I play back completely differently than the original song. So I've got another 4 hot cues of just like basically 4 different notes that I'm like da 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 da, and I'm like hitting the hot cues back. So in that instance, there's like a mixture of loops and one-shots, and then we have the bass line, all the bass line changes programmed into a sequencer. So I've just got to step along as the song plays along, be moving the bass line along. That's the bass line's being played by the Moog, as well as all the sampling stuff that we're doing, Mark's singing, and then I'm also messing with the Moog, so the filters and the cutoff, and again, like pedals on the ground, delay stuff. It's a lot, in a way. It's actually a lot harder, this set, than playing in the band, because the band, you have a drummer and a bass player, in this time, but in the two-man set, the bass player and the drummer are machines. So it's like the two of us have to be controlling what the bass player and the drummer are doing, as well as Mark singing, as well as Mark playing samples, as well as me playing samples. It's honestly really, really fun. We've toured the full band basically nonstop for the whole. We committed to doing it live, all the way live. No Ableton, no completely dialless. Like everything
That's
you hear
wild.
is very much live, being triggered. But it's either triggered or played, and it's like not triggered as in triggered at the start of the track, and the whole track just plays out. It's like maybe there's a sequence that we hit go on that goes for a minute, but you got to keep that sequence in time with all the different other things that are happening, and then you can affect that sequence, and you know when the sequence is coming out and what have you. But it's like. It's a lot. It's definitely
That sounds like a lot, and there's no computer then.
No computer.
That's wild.
The computer is, or the closest thing that we have to a computer. We have a sequencer by Arturia called a BeatStep Pro that we use for not only the two-man set but also the band. So when there's a drum machine moment or a really intricate sequence moment, I mean, I've already told you I can't play keyboard really, but like. I can't be playing like a crazy kind of acid line. I can't really do that. So we put that on the sequencer, and then we'll generally have a drum machine part that'll be sent to our drummer, and our drummer can play in time with the drum machine. But we're playing live drums, so you're getting live drums and also the electronic drum kit. But also we're all synced up. And then for the two-man show, that sequencer basically is the brain of the whole set, so we can speed up and slow down from that sequencer. But each song, they have banks, and each song has its own bank of 16 different, or up to 16 different sequences in it. A lot of songs we don't use 16 sequences. For instance, "Dumb Love" is like the bass line's the same the whole way through, so you're just going back and forth between both takes of the bass line. But that's the closest thing we have to a computer.
That's really cool. So you're basically pretty much an all analog setup.
100%. Yep.
That's really sick. How are you guys time syncing?
The sequencer sends tempo to the drum machine.
Okay.
And the sequencer sends tempo and MIDI notes to the Moog. So it'll send a bass line to the Moog. Tempo of the drum machine is locked to the sequencer. Make sense so far?
Yeah.
And then Mark will be playing guitar. So he's a human. He plays. Yeah. Mark sings, and then we have 4 CDJs and a mixer, and we are mixing in and out of the drum machine at times. So like as I said before, there'll be moments in songs where we're like sampling back one shots, and other times where we're like taking maybe an 8-bar break from a song, or like we do play other people's songs that mean something and speak to us and our influences during this set. But the transitions, which I'm guessing is what you're trying to, like, how does it all stay in sync? Yeah. It's like there's moments where we do a build up where we're mixed in a song, we're mixing it in, and we know like the songs are obviously selected so that they start with a break that is like not too busy, or it's extended, or we've edited it in some way so that when we press play, we know we've got about 8 bars until we need to come out of the bass line. That 8 bars comes around, I go to the next step along in the sequence where there'll be a blank. So it won't be firing any MIDI information to the synthesizer. It will just keep the tempo. So the drum machine will stay in time to the tempo of the sequencer. I hope this is making sense and not.
Yeah, I've got you so far.
Yeah. And then obviously on a CDJ, you can nudge it around. So you make sure the song that you're mixing in, you can keep in sync. Generally, once you have it locked, it's locked. So then you have it. Then we can do kind of like some effects and cool stuff on the drum machine. Drum machine mixes out. Stop. Press stop on the sequencer. Then the only thing playing is the song on the CDJ. Then to get back into the mix, this is the crazy part, is that the next song will have its own kit, obviously, and it might be a very simple first kit with a hat, cap, clap like this, just very simple, so that I can hear that, and when I want to mix out the same way I would mix in on a CDJ, I mix in on the sequencer and the drum machine. So I'll be listening, I'll have it set to the same tempo, and I'll press play on the drum machine, on the sequencer, and it'll fire the drum machine, and I'll have to listen and be working in reverse. So it's like I hit play, and I'll hear that the clap on the drum machine might be too fast. So I think to myself, okay, I would slow down the drum machine if I could, but I can't. So therefore I have to go and speed up the CDJ a little bit to lock it in.
Okay.
Crazy, right? Yeah.
That makes me nervous, honestly, just thinking about this. I have anxiety just thinking about triggering all this in time.
That's the thing. It's just like it's very, very tight triggering and
Yeah.
sequencing and once you do it enough, it's actually really thrilling and I wouldn't do it any other way. Like it's really fun because you can go like bang, oh shit, yeah, okay, we're tight, bang, and then you can do like tricky stuff where you pull the song out and you run the clap on the drum machine. So you pull the song out, so it goes clack, 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 and you go back in. It's like it's really fun, man. It's like
that's cool. So really the main thing, just so I understand, is like you got to time the sequencer with the CDJs.
Yeah, the only way of being able to keep things in sync, in theory, the only times that things could go out of sync is the mix between the CDJs and the sequencer. Yeah. And the great thing is you can't nudge a sequencer, but you can nudge the CDJs.
Right. So you just got to catch it up. Yeah.
Yeah. And you do it, as I said, you do it enough times where I know it sounded crazy before, where it's like you press the moments where I'm bringing in the drum machine and you press play and I can hear that the clap on the drum machine is too fast. Mm-hmm. I'm so used to thinking like the drum machine is going too fast, so I'd want to slow it down, but now I need to do the reverse of that. I need to speed up the CDJ. And in that split second, you wouldn't even notice that it was out of time.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. Well, I mean, you have a long history of DJing too. So
exactly.
Like, I'm sure that definitely helps.
I think like that. It's like I think like that way more logically than I do as like a musician can get lost in the notes and stuff. Like I completely think like in terms of the sequence of events over the course of a song. And then with regards to this set, we're doing an hour and a half set. It's like I think in like big blocks of time, which makes heaps more sense to me than getting lost in the notes.
Yeah, for sure. That's really cool, man. I hope to catch a live show sometime soon.
Dude, we're playing at Don Quixote. We're doing the first of these Club NF shows on March 8th. You should come.
Yeah, I would love that. I'm in Denver.
Oh, shit. I didn't know that. Sorry.
So I don't think you guys are coming. I checked your tour schedule. I don't think you're coming here. You should put it on the to-do list next time. Yeah. But yeah, I do come out to LA, I don't know, maybe twice, 3 times a year.
We should try and get out there and do one of these shows in Denver. It would make sense to do a little...
Yeah, I mean, the electronic music scene in Denver is exploding right now. It's huge. It's good. That's a big reason I moved here. So I love the scene here, and I would love to see that set up. Have you guys played here?
Yeah,
like in recent years?
Times. Yeah. We've done... I want to say the Ogden. I want to say
Ogden's cool.
I don't remember the name of the venues. Bluebird? Is that right?
Bluebird? Yeah, there is. There's a Bluebird. Right. There's Mission.
We DJed. I think we DJed that. Oh, I don't know. We DJed we played. We've supported Jungle and we've supported Big Wild at Red Rocks. So we played Red Rocks twice.
That's sick. That's
actually 3 times. 3 times we played there with Louis DeChild as well.
Oh, great.
And then, after one of the shows with Jungle, we DJ'd at some joint downtown, which is also really good too.
Yeah, there's a lot of venues here.
Yeah.
I live right next to Red Rocks. It's a great area.
It's beautiful.
It's so pretty, man. I love it.
Although I will say I haven't played a good show at that venue once.
Really?
Dude, I don't know. Like, man, when you get up there on that stage and like you have your in-ears in, I figured out how to get around it now, but like you have your in-ears in, and you press play, and then the speakers play, and then it bounces off the thing and comes back to you about a beat and a half behind where the real man. It did my head in, dude. I couldn't.
Well, yeah.
Like, where is the one? Like, what is going on? Like, it took me so long to get into it, and now at this point, I'm like, now I have mix engineer just be like, dude, get me a monitor speaker and play it as loud as possible next to me, so I'm hearing like.
Interesting.
So I know where the beat is because the slap back on that venue. It's also so frightening, dude. Like it's a huge venue when you walk out there and you're already nervous, and then you're like, wait, what is going on with the sound? Like, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean that venue does have a really unique sound because of the rocks, like on the sides, and there's like this kind of reverberation. So I could imagine from your position on stage, it probably would have some weird delay kind of slap back. Yeah, it sounds great if you're in the audience. Like,
I know. Yeah, I've seen a show there. It's awesome venue to go to. But like, yeah, it was.
That's weird.
It's always wigged me out every time. Like, fuck, I always get nervous and I gotta go play there.
Any other like fun or crazy wild stories on the road or playing shows that are worth mentioning?
Oh man, I'd have to. It's funny. We've done so much at this point that you put me on the spot, and my mind immediately just draws a blank. But like, if you gave me some time to think about it, I could definitely come up with some answers. We we toured one year, kind of the very start of our last record with the band. It's all a bit fuzzy, and we went out on tour to tour that record, and we did 4.5 weeks, 5 weeks in a Sprinter van in like October, November. We started in LA and went all the way around the big loop, came back, like literally when I say all the way around, like all the way to the south, bang, all the way to the East Coast, up into Canada, back down and through into like, is it like Detroit? You come out of Canada and you go into Detroit and you Chicago and you like make your way around there.
That's a big trip.
Yeah, like through Iowa, like the whole way, man. Like 5 weeks of just mental, and it was dude. Touring is tough, man. Touring is really, really tough, and we did it. If I'll endeavor to never tour that time of year again if I ever have to go in a van, which hopefully, like I don't.
That's a long trip in a van, dude.
Yeah. Oh, I should say Sprinter, but regardless, like middle of winter in a lot of these places, like driving through snow, you're like, we were also, it's really hard. It's really hard to make sense of touring costs these days, particularly in the last few years. I don't know what it was like before, but man, it's really hard. So you've got to not cut corners is the wrong word, but like you've got to be thrifty to make sense of these kind of tours as much as you can.
Yeah.
So, like you drive, I'm driving, Mark's driving, everyone's driving the car. We're our own tour managers, like which is mental. Again, never do that again. But like, it was like 28 shows in 32 days. So it's like you would play a show and then you'd have to get into the Sprinter, drive for 3 hours after the show to like at least be somewhat along the road to get to the next one the next day. It was like that kind of thing.
Wow, 28 shows in 32 days.
Something mental like that. There was the East Coast stuff was 6 in 7 days. There was a show every single day. There was one where we played back-to-back shows in the same venue, so maybe that doesn't quite count, but it definitely fucking counts.
Man, I really appreciate my bed and my sleep, and like I don't know if there's enough coffee to like sustain me. That's a lot.
There's not. I mean, that was the limit though. It's I think you kind of like you press yourself to you figure out where your limit is, and Mark and I were even like, dude, we need a break from each other after that tour for a month. I was like, dude, no offense, but like, I don't want to see you. I'm sure you don't want to see me. I don't want to see anyone in the band. Like, yeah, enough.
Well, I'm sure they were great shows. I'm sure the fans loved it.
Yeah, it was sick.
You do it for the people, right?
100%. 100%.
Yeah. So as far as like upcoming projects, new music, can you share any insights to what you guys have coming on the pipeline?
Yeah, we're going to do a version 2 of these Club NF releases. We'll release probably 3 or 4 more club versions of our catalog music. And then over the course of the next 12 months, writing what's going to be the next Neil Francis record. And that's slowly but surely coming together. I'm pretty excited about it. I feel as if I'm going back to some of the early stuff that we would write in terms of like the feel of the music and like instruments selected and styles of songs. And I'm really liking the direction of the music. So hopefully hear something either towards the end of the year or top of next year in terms of new music. Otherwise, there'll be kind of these Club NF versions of things between now and then.
Yeah, I've really been enjoying them. I would like this last week leading up to this episode. I've been binging and listening to a lot of Neil Francis stuff, and I was like, oh shit, I've heard this song. Like a lot of songs I didn't even realize. And it's been kind of fun to go listen to some of the remixes of Club NF that you've done of those tracks.
Thanks, man.
Really, really fun, like fresh new way to like showcase tracks that people love in a new way.
A lot of this stuff is done out of like necessity. It's like again, going back to what I was saying earlier, I wanted, going all the way back to what I said earlier, like dance music owes me money. So if I wanted to do another project, which is inevitably what I decided to do with Neil Francis, I wanted to have every opportunity that we could between the two of us, Mark and I, to be able to perform and generate. I don't want to make it sound like it's a business or whatever, but it is, and it's tough out there to make sense of a 4-piece touring band with a front of house and whatever. And if it wasn't for us DJing, then we would hardly be able to sustain doing what we do. So it's a really important piece of the puzzle to be able to like give people 3 different iterations of what we do. And when we would DJ, people would ask us, or they'd be holding up their phone like, music sounds better with you. Well, I mean, that wasn't so bad, but like play Dumb Love or like play Dancing or whatever, and we're playing at a club or we're playing at like an outdoor vibey thing where people are dancing. I'm like, I can't go over and tell this person technically why playing dancing doesn't work in this DJ set right now because we're playing at 125 BPM and that song's at 95 BPM. Blah 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 blah. I can't do this. I can't have this conversation with you. Or the fact that "Dumb Love" is like an indie song. It's not going to fit. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I was like, dude, we should just make our own remixes. Just like make something that's going to slap in the club that's like still does the Dumb Love thing, still does the music sounds better to you thing, but it's not going to be awkward playing what's a small little indie bop. It's going to actually have that club heft.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the reason why we went and did it. And it's been good because when we go and play DJ sets now, like people aren't disappointed. Sometimes, man, we back in the day, we would not play. People would come to watch a DJ set and they would expect us to DJ our music. And I guess it sounds like DJ music in a way, but I would never play some of the records in a DJ set just because of the energy of them, and people would be so disappointed, and I'd be like, oh, I feel bad. I feel like I let you guys down, but like, so I just don't want to do that again. So we made our own versions so that people don't play Dumb Love. I'm like, cool, yeah, I can play Dumb Love, and it's not going to completely ruin this DJ set I've been playing as well,
Yeah. Well, the sonic characteristics are very different too, as well. Like, in the palette of sounds you're using, like sonically, you're going to be very different if you have more of like an indie pop kind of ethereal vibe versus thing that's just more of like a clipped kick drum that's punching.
The interesting thing about doing the two-man show and the Club NF mixes is like you really have to distill down the absolute necessary elements in the song for it to exist as a song, and all the stuff on top, get rid of it, because one, the two of us can't play it or can't be doing it all. So it's like you need the drums, you need the bass line, and you need the vocal. And then other than that, some other little bits and pieces, but fundamentally the song exists at that point. And it's been a good process to like, oh yeah, like maybe us sitting there for that day and a half trying to work on this perfect little moment of twinkliness was actually like not even necessary to the song. So you go back in, and when we're writing new stuff now, it's like, let's not overproduce stuff. Like why? It's not necessary.
Yeah, that's really good advice too for like overproducing stuff. Like, what advice would you give to somebody who feels like they struggle with that?
That's tough. Just don't do it. This sounds stupid, but like, just don't think. The moment you start thinking, you're done. Take a break or something like that. Like, get in a flow state and get as much out of that flow state as you can. And the moment you start second guessing yourself, either stop it, be like, okay, I'm done. I'm like, take a break on this one. Or just like, don't let the idea of being a perfectionist stop you from finishing something or calling something finished, because you can call it finished. It may not be the best thing ever, but maybe that one thing that you learnt in the process of writing that song, you then apply to the next one, and the elements might be that much better in the next one, that you go and do that thing that you learnt in this one, and that made that song fantastic. Ear or whatever. But there's one thing that I don't do most of the time is that when I think something's sick, and it's sick. Full stop. Like, you got to be hard-headed, and believe in yourself. Otherwise, you go around and you make nothing. You don't finish anything. You're wasting your time.
Yeah, that's good advice, man. I like that a lot. It's easy to get in your head. I think for a lot of artists and producers, like, we signed up for this life of existential crises of our 100%. Creativity.
Yeah. Like, dude, I suck or whatever. But there's like a couple of different things that I do. Like, if I have like a moment when I'm making something, something happens that makes you go, ooh, start feeling it. That means something, or like if I get out of my seat and I'm actively dancing to something that I just made, that means something. And if I'm not as well, that means something. Like, if I'm sitting here and I'm like, chuck it away, get one that makes you excited,
Yeah. I heard it said by somebody else on the podcast. I forget who it was. It's like, if a song moves you, chances are it's going to do it for somebody else too. But that's good stuff, man. Well, I want to respect your time. It's been an hour. This has been super cool, like, hanging with you. And like I said, anybody, for whatever reason, if you haven't heard Neil Francis or the new Club NF, definitely check them out. It's a vibe. I feel like it's music you can do anything to. You could like drive in your car, smoke a joint, take a bath, go to the beach. It's a kind of all around listenable music.
Thank you.
That reason I really love it. But yeah, thanks again, Jordan, for hanging out on the pod. I definitely need to catch a live show. It's going to happen eventually. And yeah, best place for people to connect with you online?
The Neil Francis Instagram or on TikTok. Hit me up through there. We're pretty good at responding.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll include all the links in the show notes for anybody listening. But yeah, man, thanks again for joining the podcast. It's been super cool. If you ever do find yourself in the Denver area, definitely hit me up.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Also, other way around, please hit us up if you ever see me through there. I'd love to hang out, grab a drink or something.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. Do me a huge favor if you would and hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you're listening to the podcast. If you don't hate the podcast, please leave a 5-star review. It would help me out a ton. Don't forget to check back on Tuesdays for new episodes. If you want to be the first to get new episodes and stay updated and get free new devices and sample packs and other stuff that I'll be sending out in the future, join the newsletter. Just go to liveproducersonline.com/newsletter and or check out the links in the show notes. Make sure to give this guest a follow on the socials, give them some love for spending their time. And once again, thanks for listening to the podcast. I will see you next time. Later.